Okay, now that we've got our menu button styled, and you see on hover, I actually did go back and change the hover color because I thought it was too dark, so that it's a sort of darker blue, but it's not nearly black. Anyway, now that we've got this changed, whenever we click on this, it pops down, but we don't want this to be, um, a floated list like this, because remember we have a menu buried under this FAQ list and it's not showing, and so we need to fix some of that. So one of the easiest ways to deal with this is we can just start to right click this, inspect it, and we can find where it is in the HTML over here. And we don't want to pick the link itself, we want to pick the list item. Um, I mean, you can look at the link, but you'll see that it's already display block and stuff. We actually need to click on the list item. And first of all, you'll notice that it says float left. All right, so if we change that to float none, it doesn't float anymore. So that's a good start. It's the first place to start. And then we also have position relative, which you can leave that the same. Now, this is one of those things again where as you're making changes, you might want to make some notes about the changes that you're making, because right now I'm just sort of adjusting the styles in line. I'm not actually doing anything to override them. So you could also see that that works and go, okay, well, let's go find that on near line 533 of my work here, and you could change it. But here's the problem with just changing it on line 533 is that we just need to make this based off of a media query. We don't want to actually change this so that it doesn't float at all. We want it to change on a larger screen. So one of the things that you can think about as you're doing this is, this was originally a float left, right? What we can do is we could take this selector, we can copy that, and we can go over here and actually, let's just go here, and I'm going to go to the regular set of selectors, and I'm going to copy some stuff like this one. I'm just going to copy this entire rule. So let's copy that. And then if I jump back over here to elements, I can click the plus symbol just to get the inspector style sheet to show up. And I'm going to go to the inspector style sheet. I don't care about this. I just needed to get this style sheet to show up. And I'm going to paste that rule that I had. And let's start thinking about how we can deal with this in terms of media queries. So let's do an at media screen, and let's put our parameters, our argument here. So we have, let's do min width of 600 pixels, so that whenever we get to 600 and higher, it will go to this, okay? All right, and for the regular basic, we're gonna say float none, okay? So that would be the regular basic version of this, is float none, okay? And then right here for the media query is where we'd actually want it to float left, and we can kind of test to see if that actually is working, and you see that it does. All right, so that's good. And then position relative, I'm not actually changing anything about that. So I'm going to actually, you could also see, just for giggles, you could say, what does it look like whenever, oops, here, let's, on this one, what does it look like whenever we have that be static? It doesn't seem to make a difference, right? So anyway, I'm going to leave position relative there the way that is. And this is what I'm going to change. I'm going to change this in my style sheet in just a minute with this, okay? But for right now, let's just keep on messing around with this. Okay, now the other thing too is I want to remember FAQs. If you can't remember which one yours is, FAQs is the one of mine that has submenus, all right? But you can't see it on this mobile screen. When I hover, it does nothing. So one of the things that you can do is you can get it up on the screen either by going here to the larger screen. You can right click it and you can inspect that, and then you can drill down. See, here's that anchor tag, and here's that submenu that it wants to drill down into, and you see here it's the selector of main, navigational or navigation UL inside of a UL. Well, what you can do is you can, as I did before, you can click to this so you can go and copy the information out of the style sheet. Okay, and this is the rule right here. I'm Mine's a line on around line 547. I'm going to copy that. And so if I go to my sources, all right, I can go to my inspector style sheet right here. If I'm inside of sources, I can click on my inspector style sheet. And so I'm going to just come down here and we're going to take a look at what this does. So if we were to get rid of, for instance, let's make a copy of this down here. We'll copy this. We'll move it here. And I'm going to tab everything in so it's nice and clean. I can see what's going on. Okay, so we've got our main navigation UL. Well, I'm going to leave everything the way it is for the min width of 600, but then for the original one that I'm going to change later, all right, here, I'm going to say float, let's say float none, because we don't want anything floating. Also, this left right here of negative 999M, well, first of all, we've got a position of absolute. This left won't even matter if I change the position from absolute to, let's say, static. And the thing is, you didn't notice a change because the display is currently set to none on small screens. So what we want to do is say display of block, all right, like that. Okay, and we're going to say display block so that it actually shows up. And don't worry about the hover state right now, but it's actually there. Okay, so that's good. The other thing that I want to point out is if I do change this, let's say to relative, right, then it does something a lot different, right? And part of it is because then it's taking this left of 999, negative 999M. You could change this to like auto or something like that, or you could change it to inherit or something. But still what's happening is it's being based off of it relatively. So I'm just, you know, I'm not worried at all about this part of it. I actually don't care. If you change it to static, then it will not follow any left, top, right, or bottom offsets like this, okay? And it won't follow a z-index either. So these become not important. This is z-index I don't need here in the mobile view of it. For left, if you wanted to do auto, or you could say inherit. That's fine. That's fine. It doesn't matter. You could get rid of it too. It really doesn't matter. In fact, let's just see what happens if we do get rid of it. You'll notice, and the top won't make a difference either. Okay, you'll notice that if I were to pull this open and then I go back here, you see that it doesn't really make any kind of difference. Now, the other thing too that you might want to do is you might want all of these things by default to be darker so that, or something, so that you can see that they're submenus. Right now they're kind of inset, which is nice. But the other thing is I kind of don't want this drop shadow. So let's also get rid of the drop shadow. We'll say it's called box shadow, right? Like this, and we'll say none, like that. So there are no box shadows here. And the other thing is that you'll notice that the indents are a lot different. Like, so for hover, something's going on. If you want, before you start monkeying around with this, in case you accidentally click something, you might want to take everything you've done in your code view, copy that, and just put it in a pasteboard somewhere. So I just opened up TextEdit, and I'm going to paste what I've got so far, just in case I were to accidentally, you know, say click on one of these links and it refreshed and I lost all of my stuff that I'm kind of fooling around with here. So I'm going to jump back over here to Elements, and now that I've got this open, you can see, you know, I've got something happening where if I hover over this, it changes the margin and the inset or whatever it happens to be for its children elements, right? So that's kind of a weird thing. You might want to undo that. But let's also look at this. We're going to inspect this. And this is that A, and we have a width of 200 pixels. I want to change that so that the width is actually 100. So let's go here, and we're going to copy this element. I'm just going to copy this selector, and then I'm going to go over here to my sources, and let's just go ahead and paste that here. Okay, and we've got our width, and originally it was 200 pixels, but we're going to say that it's 100. 100% here. And the other thing, and see then that way it actually, whenever I hover over it, you see that it hovers the entire line. And then just to be really clear, we're going to copy this and we're going to come down here and we're going to paste it. And we'll turn this one back to what it was originally, which was 200 pixels, because we don't want it to take up the entire screen here, or at least not on the larger screen. Whenever you do this, right? You don't want this section to take up the entire screen. Had I not changed that back to 200 pixels right here, like if I put a comment on this, for instance, right, like that, and then I came back and I pulled this open again, and I hovered. See, it does something weird. It only goes 100% of its parent element. I guess it wasn't taking up the entire screen, but it would only go 100% of what its parent element was capable of being. So that's where you want to give it something that's more definite, like a pixel dimension, okay, or an M or a rem or something like that, okay. And so then it fixed it. It should fix it. So then it gives you the ability to have something specifically a certain size, and then it'll wrap. You know, it'll force itself to wrap. Okay, so we've got that much so far. Now, the thing that I need to deal with over here is, you know, what's going on with all this jumping. And here's the other thing too, is that you're not going to have a hover state. It's not going to be quite the same whenever you are on a mobile device, but it's still irritating. If I were to minimize my screen right here, it's still irritating that it jumps around a lot. So one of the things that we can do is, let's just actually, let's right click, and we're going to inspect this and see what's happening here. So it only shows me the basic stuff, right? But if I were to, actually let's click on this LI. One of the things that we can do is we can turn on the hover states to see what is changing with these. So right now that's the LI hover state. Let's look at the hover state of this. And you see that there's nothing showing up inside of here. It is showing that it changes this color, this background color. I'm okay with that. And then let's look at this. Well, that hover state is also turned on, but it doesn't look like there's any rule. We can look at this sub menu, look at the hover state of that. Okay, and you can start to see if it's popping up with any kind of hover issues, right? This by default has some padding, and if I get out of it, it looks like something is changing with this sub one. Let's inspect that one. Okay, so if we look at this sub menu, that's what we need to click on. And then see, we have a hover, it says left 100%. Let's look at the actual hover. Okay, and we've got hover UL, padding left is 0. So if we were to take that off, at least that stops jumping around. Okay, so you can kind of start to troubleshoot some of this. All right, so we can take these things off. Let's see what happens. Left 100%, that's fine. But the padding left is one of the problems. Okay, and then the other thing is that we've got all of these different colorations on hover. So first thing I want to maybe do is I want to take this so that, let's look at this style in the style sheet itself. I'm going to copy this rule, okay, and then I'm going to come back up here to my sources. Let's open this up a little bit more so that I can see my inspector style sheet. I'm going to come to my inspector style sheet, and let's just go ahead and paste that here. Okay, the original one I'm going to leave so that there's no padding, and then in my media query, whenever it gets bigger, I'll come down here in the bottom inside my media query. Let's just for clarity, let's tab that stuff in. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take off this, and then I can say here, I can say padding left, for right there I can just say auto. Okay, I can just say auto. All right, so whenever I hover, there's no jumping. Whenever I make this bigger on a larger screen, Now look what happens on this hover. This isn't showing up. So I did something. I did something to mess that up. And the way for me to know is that it was working right before I made those changes. And so the last thing that I can, that I have to look at that's in the larger screen that is different is that I had this left auto commented out. So let's take that comment off and let's see if that solves the problem. So let's open that up. And it did in fact solve the problem. Okay, so and then whenever we're over here, this doesn't jump around. Now we do have this issue with the hover popping up, the hover background color, and that might be really frustrating or annoying. And so that's something else that we can change. So I'm going to do that thing again where I copy everything I've got so far. I'm going to select all that and I'll paste over it. So I've got my changes so far. That way, if I accidentally click on one of these when I'm inspecting it, it doesn't refresh the page or something. The other thing that you can do too is, you could make it so that instead of having, these dark background colors for the mobile menu, you could also do something like have, a border, a left border or something like that, that shows you your different menu options, like your different lists. So that's something that you could play around with as well. So for instance, like let's just look at this for a moment. Let's copy this where we've got main navigation UL. Actually, we've already got one up here. What we can do is, instead of having a box shadow, maybe we can do a border left of 1 pixel. Let's just try this solid. And yeah, and so you can see that it starts to pop up. And then we could have it be, I don't know, a darker color than that. Let's just say for right now, it's easy black. The other thing that you could do is you could inset this. You could say that you want it to have a margin. Let's try that, margin left of like, I don't know, 25 pixels. Let's do something like that. And that might be a little bit too much, right? But you could maybe do 5 pixels. Let's try 10. So you could try something like that where it actually bumps each one of those things in a little bit, so that if you wanted to have, the line off to the side, you could also maybe make it a little bit heavier, like maybe 2 pixels, and then we can change the color so that it's that color but possibly a little bit darker, so it's not so, it doesn't stand out so much. All right, you could try something like that. And then, you can also make the change so that these things don't have these background colors. And basically what you'll need to do is you'll need to identify all the different things that you made the changes to before. Now, if I go over here, the problem is that I've got those lines over here, you see, and also it's bumped over. They've got these weird left margins, and so you would need to make sure that you undo that in your bigger view. So let's take this, and actually I'm just going to copy the whole thing, and I'll get rid of what I don't need. And so I've got my UL. Actually, it's right here, right? So we can also just say border none. I don't need to copy it. So border none for the larger screen. And the other thing that I did was I said margin left. So we'll say margin left, and let's just say auto. Okay, or inherit or something like that. Let's try that and see if that adjusts properly. So now, yeah, it gets rid of that border and my margin's fine, but it's still good here. All right, so you could do something like that as well. Again, I'm going to do a select all, copy, select all. I'm going to paste over it, keep my stuff updated. Now, I want to get rid of these hover states in my mobile view. And so that might be one of those things where, you might want to take a peek at your actual code view. It might be easier than looking in the inspector. We can go in to find all the hovers. They're all kind of towards the end a little bit. And so this might be where, you could look at this background color. It's the UL that is the descendant of the list item hover, and it gets this really dark background color. So this is the one that I actually want to make a change to. And the other thing too is we can also adjust this ancestor if we need to. So I want to copy this, this main navigation UL. I'm going to come over here, and in my media query towards the end, I'm going to paste that in there because I want it to work like this for my larger screen, but I need it to do something different over here on my smaller screen. So the thing that I actually care about is this background color. So we can just say none. Okay. And then I actually just noticed that I created duplicate rules. I've got one that's, this selector is exactly the same as this selector. So I'm actually going to get rid of this one, right? That's the one that doesn't matter. And now you'll notice that I've got like this weird thing happening, you know, where I've got all of these hover states. Well, one of the things that is going on is that my ULs that are descendants of list item hovers, they all have some different padding. So like you'll notice here that this one has a padding left of 0. You'll notice that maybe some of these other ones don't even have padding, like this UL doesn't have a padding left. And so what we need to do is kind of make some of this stuff a little bit more consistent. So the easiest thing to do, I'm going to copy this padding left 0, copy that. And then I'm going to just like add it to each of these, and you'll start to notice that they become a little bit more consistent, right? So I've got this UL with a padding left of 0. Okay, so I might be okay, you know, just working with that. And then if I hover over any of these other things, it's okay, right? And so I think I'm going to just stick with that, and I think that I'm good with it. And again, I'm going to select all, I'll do a copy. I'm going to select all of these, paste it, so I've got a backup of it. And from here, I think, you know, I could go in and I could make some of these slightly different colors and stuff, but for the sake of time, I think you've kind of seen how you can target some of these descendants and things like that. So for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and stick with this as my primary navigation resource, and then I'm going to go into my style sheet here in Dreamweaver, and I'm going to work with what I've got. And you'll notice that one of the things that we did, or that the style sheet started off with you know, the main way it was set up with the Topcat underscores theme, is that it actually technically is not a mobile first style sheet, because it goes and it loads all of the desktop stuff, and then it goes to do at media screen and it goes to a max width right at the end, and making the exception for the mobile view. And so one of the things that I had done, if you were paying attention here, is that I had actually done it sort of reverse of that, where I had at media screen and min width is 600, so that I start to load the non-mobile stuff after the mobile stuff would load. So we kind of have a little bit of a discrepancy right now, and that might be a little bit confusing. So I'm going to clean that up, because I really do like a mobile first approach, especially when it's confusing, like with your menus and stuff. So let's take a look in Dreamweaver, and let's take a look and see what we can do. You'll notice here that we've got our max width of 600 pixels. I'm going to go ahead and just leave that alone for a moment, and I'm going to leave some of the menu toggle stuff the way it is, and I'm just going to work around that. And let's go all the way up to the top where we've got main navigation, and we'll do sort of like a little bit of a line by line comparison to see what things we have in common and what things need to change. So if we scroll over here, you'll notice that we don't actually change anything to the actual main navigation. And so you'll see here that we've got that the main navigation is, you know, the way that it is. It's fine. I think the first place that we see a change maybe is in the way that the main navigation LI is set up right here. So we've got we've got float none, and we have relative. So before I do anything, you know, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy all of the media query that I've got here. I'm going to copy that so that everything will have something to override all the changes that I make. And right before the small menu, I'm going to go ahead and come down here, and I'm going to put a comment that says this is these, let's put these are desktop sizes. Menu rules, something like menu rules. Let's do that instead of sizes. Okay, and then can do something like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and paste this media query in here. All right, let's just start with that. And then that way I know that I'm already overriding all the changes that I'm going to make above. Okay, so up here where I've got, I think we decided the main thing, the first one is this list item where I say float is none. So we're going to go over here and change that to float none. And we left position relative. And then the next one is UL. Okay, so we don't change any of the A information. So we'll leave the box shadow as is. Actually, we're not going to leave the box shadow. We're going to change it right here because it's a duplication right here. And I think that one of the things that we need to do, because I want to make sure that this is down below, so I'm going to copy this and we'll double check. It should be the same. Yep, and I've got that box shadow there, so we're good. Okay, so I'm going to change this instead to say box shadow is none. Okay, and then we'll have a float of none. We're going to match that. Position we changed to static. Okay, and then we got rid of the left and the Z index and the top. Okay, and then we changed this to display of block. And we did a border left. Here, I'll copy these things. All right, this is what we changed. All right, we added that. Okay, so let's come up here. And so we've got now our main navigation, UL. That's all going to be okay, I guess, because none of this is going to take effect right now. It would actually happen later. And we could always go and move this back later in case that's confusing to you. But right here, we've got main navigation ULA. We did make a change here. So we have a width of 100%. Okay. And then here we've got, let's see, the next thing that we change is it's a descendant UL, which I believe is this one. Yep, LI hover, and then the descendants ULs. So we've got, we made a change where we're taking padding left of 0, and then we do background none. Yeah, and I think we'll be okay with that. And then, let's see, is that the same thing? That's a different one. Yeah, so this is the UL list item hover, so we'll leave that alone. And then we didn't change anything about current page item, and that should do it. So now if I cross my fingers, and we're gonna do a save here, and we'll do an upload. So we'll put that up there. And we're gonna come over here. I'm just gonna do this in this new window, hit refresh. And if I click on this, there's my menu. It looks like it's working. Let's make sure that whenever we open it up, it still works just fine, and it does. Bingo. So we're good. And all right, so that's going to end this demonstration here. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move on to working within the page.